Hello to anyone who may be watching this. My name is Matt, and I've decided to do a couple of videos, with this obviously being the first one, talking and answering some of the common questions, refutations, however you want to phrase it, that people bring up against Christ, the Bible, God in general. And I've broken up into a few different main topics. And the first one, which kind of is a very main issue, is why should we trust the Bible? Because if we can't trust this book, then the rest are kind of, it's a moot point, because everything that Christians do comes from the Bible, because this is considered to be, by us, the Word of God. This is considered to be the bedrock of what we can trust. So for this first video, I want to go over why should we trust the Bible? Can the Bible be trusted? And to start, and I do have a notebook, so I'm maybe having to check everything every once in a while. But to start, the Bible is not just one continuous book. It is made up of 66 different books, which have been written over a period of 1,500 years or so by 40 plus different authors across 3 different languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Now, despite all this wide span of possibility, all 66 books come to the same point. They all agree to the same thing, which is God exists, God speaks to us, He will share with us, and Jesus was the Messiah who came upon the earth to do exactly what was prophesied years ago. To give an example, Jesus of Nazareth, when he was born, fulfilled over 300 prophecies that have been given in the Old Testament. That is quite a few books that all had different people who said the Messiah will do this, the Messiah will be this person, the Messiah will come from here. And all these books had different comments about what the Messiah would do. And in the New Testament, we see him, Jesus, doing all these things. Now, it's also quite amazing because the Bible has the most in-depth cross-references within it. The literary strength that the Bible holds is unparalleled to any other ancient text that we have. Now, one of the things that we can use to test the Bible's authenticity is archaeological discoveries. Are the things that we are finding and digging up consistent with what the Bible claims? And they are. In fact, there are many times where people have used the Bible, where they've read, okay, this occurred in this general area, and they will go and search in that area to find what the Bible told us is there. One of the examples is with Nineveh, because for many people that's a rather common Bible story, in which Jonah gets sent to this trading city, this port city called Nineveh. Now, up until I believe the 1800s, the mid 1800s, Nineveh was thought to have just been made up, because it was only talked about in the Bible. There was no evidence. We had found no city. And according to logic, there should be a city. I mean, this is a massive port city. This is a trading hub. We should have a Nineveh. And I believe it was sometime, let's see, I didn't write it down, but I believe it was sometime around the 1850s, 1830s, I believe, archaeologists found the city of Nineveh. And you also have Sodom and Gomorrah have been found, a city in which it's been absolutely just, there's just ruins all over, but there are sulfur balls, which are the most pure form of sulfur found on the planet. You have across Israel throughout the New Testament, as it's been spoken of in the New Testament, all marks to be correct. So we have archaeologists coming across all these truths which align with what the Bible has told us. Now, with the Old Testament, we also can be fairly certain, despite its age, that the Old Testament is true because of the method that the Jewish scholars used to copy. Because just like we have Roman numerals, where we have a letter, but it corresponds to a quantity, the Hebrew language is the same. So the Jewish scholars, when they were copying a text, would copy an entire page, and once they were done, they would count up the quantity that the letters amounted to. If the new page was different from the original, instead of trying to correct whatever mistake and find whatever mistake they made, they would simply throw it away and start again. So that has some rigor to it, which lets us have a little more faith that the Jewish scholars did indeed copy down correctly the Old Testament. And then when it comes to the New Testament, we have across the world 5,500 to 5,800 manuscripts and parts of manuscripts and documents that we can use to compile the New Testament. So you sometimes will hear people comment that, oh, we can't trust the Bible because it's just a big game of telephone. It's just a translation of a translation of a translation. Well, that's not true. We actually have the original Greek that scholars are able to go back to, the original documents that we can go back to, as well as the Dead Sea Scrolls which have been found, which are the Old Testament. And they all correspond to current translations within a very close degree. Now, you are never going to have a perfect translation. All right, you are dealing with different languages entirely. So you're going to have translations that are balancing translating word for word and translating the meaning and message behind a word. And a perfect example is if you go into Google Translate and you type in a message and translate it to French, then back to English, then to French, then back to English, it's going to end up getting messed up because Google Translate is going to translate the words and not the meaning. So we have a translation in English of Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, which when we compare to the original documents that we are able to find, still is very accurate to the message that was conveyed. And in fact, that's why with my Bible, I have Legacy Standard Bible. And I like it quite a bit because in it, they will mark locations in which a word could be translated into something else. So they will have the main translation as to what they believe the word was, and then in the margins they will specify this is some of the other words that it could have been. And that is all to say, though, we still have the original documents. Now, to give you an understanding, when we're talking about people like Julius Caesar, Aristotle, Socrates, we have an average of 10 to 30 documents talking about these people. So with Jesus, we have 5,000 plus versus 10 to 30. And in fact, a lot of the ones that are about some of those people that I just mentioned weren't written by the individuals. In fact, I believe it is Aristotle who we don't have any writings of Aristotle. Nobody argues that Aristotle claimed and stated what he did, that his philosophies were what they were, but everything we have of him is from his students. And that could be incorrect. It could be Socrates, but it is one of the Greek philosophers. So to give you that understanding, we have quite a strength that we can lean back on when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to this book. Now, speaking of people outside of the Bible, we have individuals that are not in the Bible, which have spoken of and referenced Jesus and other characters within the New Testament, other individuals who have shared the gospel. A main one being Flavius Josephus, who wrote the Antiquities of the Jews, which, in case y'all were not aware, for anyone who is not a Christian and has not read the Bible, the Jews, the majority of them were not a fan of Jesus. So a Jewish historian commenting that Jesus was going around doing miracles, was going around saying the things that he was, they had no interest, they had no benefit to doing these things, because a lot of Jews really hated him, and that's why he ended up being crucified and killed. You also have Tacitus and Suetonius, who were Roman historians, and Lucian of Samosata, who was a Greek writer. Now, all these people, they mention Jesus, they mention Paul, they mention the teachings. They are talking about things within the Bible, yet none of those writings are included. So we have external resources that we can pull from to verify that what is in this book is true. And finally, which I will go ahead and put up the prompt as well, so y'all can put it in. I asked ChatGPT, due to the historical strength, the literary consistency of the Bible, parentheses, both Old and New Testament, in parentheses, and the archaeological discoveries which back the content of the Bible, is there a strong possibility the Bible is true? And here's what it had to say, which of course it is only going to be dealing with the factual, because it's a program. It's not going to give us an answer as to whether the spiritual is true. But according to the factual, it responded saying, historically and textually, the Bible has unusual strength compared to other ancient documents. Manuscript evidence, tens of thousands of manuscripts, fragments, and translations, orders of magnitude more than any other ancient work, permit reconstruction of the original text with high confidence. Historical and archaeological correlation. Many locations, rulers, customs, and events described in both testaments have independent corroboration. Discoveries such as the Teldan Stele, House of David, Kairos Calendar, a Persian decree policy, and Pilate inscription, Pontius Pilate, align with biblical data. Literary and linguistic continuity. Across roughly 15 centuries, written by more than 40 authors in 3 languages, the text maintains internal thematic coherence, creation, covenant, redemption, without the anachronisms typical of late myth compilation. External attestation. Jewish, Roman, and early Christian documents acknowledge persons and movements central to the narrative. These factors make the Bible historically credible and textually reliable as an ancient corpus. Now, all of this that I've just said, as far as any of you know, could be made up. I could have just pulled all of this information from nowhere. So I do challenge anyone to go and research this yourself, because that's why I'm making these videos, because I'm hoping to share perspective, share points that we can use in conversations when somebody does try to challenge the Bible, when they do try to challenge Christianity. And for us to be able to do that, as it is written in, I believe, Philemon, we need to have an answer for the faith that resides within us. Now, I am a fallen person. I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. But I do hope that some of this that I am able to share is able to help people have an answer to maybe questions that you've heard asked that you just didn't know how to answer, questions that you yourself have started to kind of have swirling around in your head. But whatever the case is, I hope that anything you hear, you will go and check, read through the Bible, research, and most of all, I hope that you will read, if you have not, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You will read the accounts which have shared the life of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, and you can determine after you have done your research as to whether the Bible is a trustworthy document, if Jesus was truly the Messiah, if he truly was God in human form. And if that is the case, then it would be my greatest hope that you would trust what he said and you would lean on him. Now I'm going to make another video after this to answer the rather broad umbrella of the question, why does evil exist if God is perfect? And I hope that this video is able to find someone who may potentially need help with some of these questions. And if anyone would like to leave comments, feel free to do so, and I will try to respond to them as they pop up. But thank you very much for listening, and God bless.